The giant pig in the woods. Hey, it's me again. I have another story to share, though some of you may find it quite impossible, but it's true. It wasn't just me who witnessed it. Almost all my family saw it. Also, this is quite a long read, so please bear with me. Here in the Philippines, we have these creatures known as aswang or wakwak. They look like normal people during the day, but during night, they transform into anything: dogs, cats, birds, and in this story, a pig. We went to a vacation in Bohol, an island in Visayas. I live in Mindanao, since it was almost the town fiesta of that place. It has become a Filipino tradition to visit loved ones living afar and celebrating the festivities with them. Some sort of family reunion. Anyways, we got there, exchanged greetings and pleasantries with our relatives, and exchanged stories and laughter from hours on end. Now, there was one particular aunt I was really excited to meet, my Tita Mitch. She was so sweet, kind, funny, and 9 months pregnant. She was due on May 19th, 2 years ago, 3 days since our arrival. I pointed out that there are no nearby hospitals anywhere, and the nearest hospital was a 3-hour drive away. My uncle assured me that he already contacted a midwife who was a family friend. Finally, her water broke on the second night. It was almost 7 p.m. Everyone was so excited. My uncle hurriedly went and fetched the midwife while we were preparing stuff that would help with the labor. No more than 5 minutes later, my uncle came back with the midwife. Everything was set until the midwife stepped inside the house. Upon setting foot inside the house, she quickly pulled my uncle and my dad and told them that there's a black bird hiding in the kitchen, and they should get rid of it. They quickly obliged and searched the kitchen, and they found it, a black raven, bigger than a normal raven, with glowing red eyes. My dad pulled a knife nearby and tried to stab the raven, but it quickly flew away. Following this event, the midwife told us to go to her place and take one sharpened bamboo for each of us. There were 9 of us there, and return to the house. We obliged, and when we got back, my uncle started placing us in strategic positions around the house, as if there is someone or something coming. My cousins were lucky. 2 was placed on the east side of the house facing the street 50 meters away, 2 on the west facing the nearby neighbors, 2 on the front of the house, and, maybe luck wasn't on my side that day, the remaining 3 of us were placed behind the house, facing the woods. Now, we sat there in the darkness, bracing ourselves for what was to come. We heard it before we saw it. A loud, sharp, deep squeal echoing through the woods. We bolted up, tightening our grips on our bamboo poles. The others that were placed on the other sides of the house quickly ran, and we were just standing there, waiting. Then it showed itself, emerging from the woods, the biggest pig we've ever seen, and I mean big. I'm 5 feet 8 inches tall, and the tallest in our group was probably 5 feet 9, but the pig is still taller. Eyes glowing red and foaming in the mouth, it crept nearer to us. None of us can even point our bamboos at it anymore. We were so scared. Just as I figured we were all dead meat, a loud boom echoed through the forest. The pig quickly ran into the woods, followed by my uncle and a group of his friends. They were all carrying hunting rifles. We didn't see what happened next since we just stayed where we stood. All we heard are screams and lots of gunshots. When they finally emerged from the woods about an hour later, my uncle told us what happened. They were chasing the pig, all the while shooting at it with no luck. When one of his friends finally got a clean shot, it hit the side of the pig. The pig stopped and squealed, all the while transforming back into an old man. Sounds impossible, right? It gets crazier. The next morning, we were having coffee on our veranda when a young man in his early 20s passed by our house and glared at us. We brushed it off until an old man passed by. He had no shirt on and a big bandage on his side, glared at us like we killed his dog or something. So yeah, That's my story. Sounds impossible, right? Well, it is true. Thanks for reading. Aswang, life-changing experience. This story is about my grandmother. This happened several years before I was born. I heard about this story while my mom and her sisters were bonding together reminiscing about their childhood, particularly about my grandma. She is the same grandma in my previous story, Displaced Entities. When my grandma was young, she was not as religious as she used to be before she died in 2002. They lived in a house near the National Railroad. My grandparents were not rich, but my grandfather was a well-known artist/painter in our hometown, and people usually asked him for a lot of artwork. My grandfather, however, was too kind-hearted to charge people with his work, especially when it was commissioned by his friends, so when he died, he left little money for his family. However, it was my grandfather's kind-heartedness that saved his family. All of his friends shouldered his funeral expenses, and some of them pledged to pay for my auntie's education expenses. Now my grandmother, on the hand, was loved by my grandfather very much. They got married at the age of 14 and 16 to save my grandmother from being taken by the Japanese Imperial Army during the Japanese occupation in the Philippines. She was spoiled and treated too indulgently, so when he died, my grandma became depressed. She started playing mahjong, a Chinese, tile-based game, with her friends and will stay up until the wee hours in the morning. According to my mother, as the eldest among 7 children, she took the responsibility of looking after her siblings. She would stay up late waiting for grandma. My grandmother's gambling habit went from bad to worst until one scary evening, when she had the most frightful experience. While she was on her way home at 3 a.m. from a friend's house, my grandmother saw a huge black dog a few feet away from her. The dog was so huge, it was like 5 feet tall, and it was just standing in the middle of the road staring at her. My grandmother was startled, as it was so unusual to see a dog that big. What scared her was how the dog was acting so strange. It was doing nothing and just staring at her, and she could also hear a growl, like as if the dog is going to pounce at her. She started to walk fast, and her heart almost dropped when she had to walk past the dog, which was still staring at her. She kept on walking and was too scared to look back. When she turned on the next corner, she continued walking until she saw something weird from a distance. There was this huge gray bird perched at the edge of a banana tree a few feet away. My grandmother stared intently at the large, powerfully built bird as she continued to walk forward. Its eyes were bright red, and it was also staring back at her. The hair at the back of her neck started to raise when she realized that the bird was perched at the edge of a banana stalk, which was physically impossible. My grandmother realized that what she was looking at is not an ordinary bird but an aswang, or a shapeshifter. The bird was too heavy for the banana stalk to sustain its weight, but it just stood there without the stalk breaking. The bird made a sudden scary screeching sound that made my grandmother jump and run. When she was a few feet away from the banana tree, she heard a sudden flapping of heavy wings from behind, and she knew right then that the bird was flying towards her. My grandmother in an instant stooped down to avoid the bird as it flew over her head, its talons grazing her hair. According to my mom, flying aswangs normally grab their victims on their legs. Then they lift them up in the air and throw them in the ground to incapacitate their victims. That is the time that they devour their victims once they have been disabled. My grandmother started shouting for help as she ran as fast as she could. She knew that there was no way she can outrun the aswang, so she went inside a huge cement pipe at the side of the street, as there was a government construction project being done in that area. My grandmother hid there, crying and praying for her life. She could still hear the flapping of wings outside circling the area. Fortunately, for her, the neighbors heard her cry for help. Houses started to switch their lights on, and a few people went out to check what was going on outside. The aswang left and my grandmother crawled out of the cement pipe. From that day on, my grandma stopped gambling and has never stayed up late outside again. She became a devout Christian until the day she left us. Strange Man in the Woods. My name is Vladimir, 23 years old. I'm born and grew up in the Philippines. But now, I live in Canada with my parents. This is a story when I was 6 years old. I was in the Philippines and is taking vacation at my grandparents' house in province called Aklan. Me and my parents usually live in city called Manila. But if there's no school or I'm on vacation, I will visit my grandparents' home and stay there until school starts. My grandparents' house is on the top of a mountain. So literally, you can't see anything but trees around it. The main road is 15 to 20 minutes walk from their house. Cars can't go in because of little space of the road due to trees. Motorbikes can go in but only halfway through because it will be hard for it to drive up to their house. My grandfather on my mother's side is still alive at that time. Back then, when he was still alive, he usually takes me outside to take a stroll or sightseeing. I was his first grandchild, so he always pampered me. One day, it was in the afternoon, my grandfather and I were taking a stroll on the mountain. He was holding a big knife, usually for cutting weeds and branches in the woods that was in the way so that I can easily go walk on it, and a big sack. He said that we will try to find a fruit or vegetables that we can take home to grandma. I remember when we were walking in the woods, we came across this big mango tree. It's a big Indian mango tree that you can't even reach a branch of it. Usually, most mango trees are short enough for people to reach its fruit to harvest, but this tree is not. And it has a lot of green mangoes on it. You could say that it looks like it's the right time to harvest. So, after seeing that, my grandfather said that he will try to poke the mango from the tree using a stick that he found lying around, and that he will try to make it fall into the ground. And while he was doing that, he asks me that if a mango falls to the ground, it's my job to put the mango on the big sack that he brought. So, I was doing that when suddenly, an unknown man came to me. He was wearing a white dress and a blue jean, but he's not wearing any shoes. He said to come with him and that he will show me something. As 6 years old back then, I didn't really know the words, "Don't talk to stranger." He's like in mid-20s, skin tanned, well you could say he's a little bit handsome too, so I go with him. I don't know what happened, but as I was following him in woods, we came across this huge house. Well, you could say it's not a house, it's a mansion. And on top of that is a gold mansion. A gold mansion? I remember when the door automatically opened like it's a censored or something. And when we got inside, man, even now I didn't believe what I saw, but all equipment, all interior, the floor, the ceilings, table, chair, carpet, you name it. It's all gold. I mean literally gold. Like a gold jewelry. Well, even the bookshelves and books are gold. So, when we were inside the house, there's a big staircase in front of the door where we came in. The staircase is like in the movies, it's wide enough for 2 cars to go in. So, we went up, and after we got to the top, I saw this long table. The table is like what you saw in movies or in royalty mansion, with lots of chairs in it, maybe 10 or something. I didn't really count it. But it's a long table with lot of chairs. There's different type of foods. Delicious food. It's like the food you served when there's any festive event happening like New Year, Christmas, or anything. At the end of the table there's an open chair and an empty plate with utensils at the side and an empty glass. The strange man asks me to sit on the chair. So, I sit on the chair. Pretty much obedient little girl. After that he reached a plate on the table with lots of food and placed it in front of me. On this plate is a white rice. Well, it looks like a white rice, like a white little grain, but it's not. Why? Because it's moving. It's like a white tiny little worm moving on a plate. He offered it to me and asked me to eat it. And of course, as a child, what do you expect? I rejected it. I don't want to eat it because I saw it moving and I think it as a worm. After rejecting his offer, he didn't say anything. He just said okay, and that he will bring me back. So, I followed him. We went downstairs, and through the door. After I went through or outside the door, I don't know what happened, but it suddenly went white. I mean there's a light that is so bright you can't see in front of you, and you had to close your eyes. The next thing happened is when I heard my grandfather shouting my name. And guess where I am? I was on top of the big mango tree. And my grandfather who's shouting my name was under the tree looking around for me. After that, I called my grandfather. He turned around and saw me above the tree. I remember seeing my grandfather worried and confused face of how did I end up on the tree? That even my grandfather, a grown man, can't climb it up by himself without some help. Since my grandfather can't reach me, he asks me to just jump down the tree and that he will catch me when I jump. So, I jump the tree, and my grandfather catches me. He then picks his knife laying on the ground that time, and went on running carrying me outside the woods, and back to our house. After we went home and everything is settled, my grandparents asked me what happened. My grandfather told my grandmother what happened in the woods while we were picking some mangoes. That I went missing, he couldn't find me, and that he saw me on top of the tree. I told them about what happened. About the strange man, the big mansion, the gold things, and even the food the man offered me. My grandmother said that she was glad that I didn't eat the food this man offered. I asked why. She said that the man that I saw might be one of the guardians of the forest, or a fairy of what the others called. She said that there is a saying that if this man or this guardian offered you a food and eat it, you will not be able to go back to the present. You will stay there with them and will remain missing forever. She said that maybe the reason the man approaches me is because he had a strong urge of feeling to make me his. My grandmother said that he only did that because he liked me and want me to be with him. So he didn't hurt me or anything. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, to subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.